Good afternoon. My name is Suhas Gandhi, and I'm here with my teammates, Andrea Lee and Anand Prasanna, and we're representing an EvenTeam of 15 students from Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Alexandria, Virginia. We're going to be discussing Emotive Aid, a portable assistive device for combating autism. The idea to pursue this project as part of this EvenTeam grant cycle came from an article that we read about the work of the winners of a national science competition pertaining to emotion recognition technology. One of the implications the article mentioned for this kind of work was in autism research, and we found this particularly intriguing. Now, we've come a long way from that initial spark, and today we're excited to be speaking about our work on Emotive Aid. Now, as many of you know, autism is a developmental disorder of the nervous system that generally appears early in life and is characterized by impairments in social interaction and communication. Its incidence is on the rise. Some recent studies have concluded some really alarming statistics, including one that said that 1 in 50 children born in the United States will be diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder at some point during their lifetimes. So it's really gaining prevalence. Now, one symptom of autism that tends to hinder everyday social interactions and in the long run can also hinder the development of meaningful relationships between autistic children and their family and their friends and their caregivers has to do with difficulties in emotion recognition. Lots of children with autism have trouble interpreting emotion from voice, which is the symptom that we're trying to address with Emotive Aid. Some current treatment modalities that are in place for autistic children include placing them in highly structured environments, giving them specialized education, and providing them with round-the-clock dedicated caregivers. Now, all of these approaches are not only costly in terms of time, money, and effort, but they also tend to limit the breadth of a child's interaction with the greater community, rather than enable it, which is the purpose of our assistive aid. Now, shown on the screen here is one approach that's out on the market today called an autism bracelet. And essentially, this is like a Livestrong band that has emoticons on it. And it's meant for the autistic child and the person they're speaking to point to these emoticons to represent what emotion they're feeling. And this is supposed to enhance the quality of social interactions. But as you can see, it's very low tech. And the major drawback is that it requires user input. And that's something that is very difficult in a normal social interaction for both the autistic child and the person they're speaking to. Our approach, on the other hand, does not require any user input. Emotive Aid uses a computational algorithm to extract emotional signatures from spoken voice in real time during a conversation and display those emotions on the LCD screen on a bracelet. Now, I'm going to walk you through this diagram that shows the conceptual framework behind Emotive Aid. So the spoken voice of the person the autistic child is speaking to is the audio input for Emotive Aid. And the device can then analyze various features within that audio sample, and it can then internally use the computational algorithm to classify that audio sample into an emotive category. That emotion is then displayed to the user on the LCD screen in the form of an emoticon. And at this point, the autistic child is both hearing the voice of the person they're speaking to and is also seeing the emoticon on their bracelet. And these auditory cues and these visual cues are being integrated in the brain at the same time. Now, because the target of Emotive Aid is children whose brains are very plastic or very adaptable, we hypothesized that there may be some therapeutic potential to Emotive Aid because with repeated use at a young age, we think that it may be able to foment the formation of neural connections, those neural connections that are responsible for making associations between voice and emotion that for some reason are lacking due to the pathology of autism. Now I'm going to pass it off to Andrea to tell you a little bit more about the specifics behind Emotive Aid.
All right, thanks, Suhas. So for some components that are actually involved in our invention, externally on the surface, a microphone receives real-time audio input, and then after analyzing those features, the closest emotional match is displayed on the LCD screen. Behind the scenes, however, a Raspberry Pi is actually doing all of this computing. So this is a single-board, credit card-sized computer, which is both powerful and compact enough for our purposes here. Both the Raspberry Pi and the battery pack are stored in the individual's pocket in order to minimize the size of the bracelet worn on the wrist.
Can we get the next slide? Nice.
Okay, so there are a couple of key features of Emotive Aid that make it really advantageous over other current products that are on the market. So one of these is that it's portable, enabling the autistic individual to use it in day-to-day interactions. It's also very user-friendly. As Suhas mentioned, it's both automatic and real-time, so it doesn't require that prompting and input from the user. And finally, it's very affordable. Our current prototype is around $100, and with further refinements, it can be potentially lowered even below that. So what have we accomplished so far? Well, for the current product, we have it analyzing 4 core emotions of neutral or no emotion, and then happiness, sadness, and anger. The accuracy through cross-validation is 82%, and battery life is more than 24 hours, although to determine more concrete statistics, real-world application testing will have to be used. The size is about 2.3 inches by 1.5 inches, and the weight of the bracelet itself is 80 grams, with the battery pack and the Raspberry Pi weighing around 95 grams. And now Anand is going to talk more about the processing and the algorithm.
Thanks, Andrea. So the algorithm we use is a machine learning algorithm, and what that is a set of techniques that allow one to map any set of input features to an output based on different types of features. Our algorithm is split into 2 phases, a training phase and a real-time phase. In the training phase, we take a voice and emotion database of hundreds of samples, each tagged with one of 4 emotions, angry, happy, sad, or neutral. From these voice samples, we extract various features like pitch, energy, frequency composition, as well as 300 additional features, all of which are relevant to emotion classification from audio signals using the OpenSmile open source software. Once we have these features, we plot them in a high-dimensional feature space and try to draw a hyperplane, a high-dimensional analog to a regular Euclidean plane through these features so that we can get areas, each of which are tagged with a certain emotion. Depending on which side of the hyperplane the voice samples lie on, the voice sample can be classified with a certain type of emotion. In real time, once we have the hyperplane generated from the training data, we can take an incoming voice sample, extract the features, and use a support vector machine algorithm to plot the samples and then apply the hyperplane to determine which predicted emotion should appear on the screen. To get an indication of how accurate and effective our algorithm is at discriminating between the 4 different emotions, we use a receiver operating characteristic curve, and more specifically, the area under that curve, as a metric by which we can determine how effective it is at classifying the 4 emotions, neutral, happy, sadness, and anger. Overall, the area under the curve was greater than 0.85, which indicates that the algorithm is quite effective at classifying the 4 different types of emotions. For feature plans, currently we have an application that allows anyone anywhere to upload a small voice sample tagged with a specific emotion to add to our training database. Because for machine learning to work, you need thousands and thousands of data samples, and currently we only have data samples on the orders of hundreds. Additionally, while we have talked with parents of autistic children on how to implement this device in its physical form, we'd really like to work with autistic children specifically so that we can get important design feedback and considerations on how to implement it in the real world. Finally, we want to create an Android or iPhone game that will train the autistic child to speak with a certain emotion and gauge how effectively they can speak with one of the 4 different types of emotions. And these are our fellow EnvenTeam members who helped us with the project today. Over there. And I'd like to thank Mr. Hannum, our advisor, the various donors and supporting organizations that helped us throughout the project, as well as the Lemelson MIT program for the funding and the critical feedback that helped us design this bracelet.
Thank you. We'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
I understand that people with autism have a hard time reading facial expressions. How is their ability to read the smiley faces on the wristwatch?
Well, the hypothesis is that beforehand, the autistic child would learn that this certain symbol, the emoticon for happy with a smile, would pertain to happiness. And so they would learn those beforehand, and then they would see them pop up, and they'd make the association. Or if they had trouble with that, it's pretty straightforward to actually just put the word happy, sad, anger, or neutral.
I think you said you had about 300 features that you started with. How did you choose those features?
We got the features from an online, there's actually been some research done on extracting emotion from audio signals, and there's actually in 2009 an international competition to determine which are the best features to extract emotion from audio signals, and that's what we used, the same features that were listed on the competition. There was a published research paper, and we just took those features.
I
I feel like some people might see this as sort of intrusive technology on the autistic child because you're extracting information on their emotions from them without maybe their permission at a certain time. How would you prevent that from happening?
Actually, so the bracelet shows the emotion of the person the autistic child is speaking to, not that of the autistic child, just so that's clear. And beyond that, there might be a privacy issue of sorts in terms of the person they're speaking to. And so that's something we'd have to take as it comes, I guess. We haven't really looked into that because we haven't gotten to the implementation stage yet. But that's a great point that we'll have to consider definitely at some point in the future.